Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Randy Rafi, and I'm with Silex Software here today to present on advanced authoring in MP Studio. I will begin with a few slides and a short discussion on Management Pack Lifecycle, and then I'll be turning the presentation over to Mike Sargent, who is one of our lead developers on MP Author and MP Studio. Today's session will be recorded and made available later in the week. Additionally, we have a couple of Silex developers on the call today to answer your questions. So if you have some questions on MP Author, MP Studio, please feel free to use the chat window to enter questions, and we'll do our best to get you answers right away. Okay, so as I mentioned, just a couple of slides. Silex Software was founded in 2003. We are one of the founding members of the System Center Alliance. So we've been working with the System Center market and community for 13 years now. Our solutions cover a wide breadth of capabilities, from authoring and auditing to management, reporting, and testing for our System Center applications. Our products include MP Studio, we'll be presenting that today, MP Author, a free authoring tool, and CP Studio, an authoring tool for creating compliance baselines. Additionally, Silex Software provides services including Power BI dashboard reporting, as well as extensions for both SCOM and SCCM, such as Management Pack development and reporting for SCCM. We're very proud to say that we have over 5,000 users of our software worldwide, and here's just a brief peek at some of those. MP Author is a free management pack development tool for Operations Manager 2012. Probably most of you have taken a look at it already, but if not, you can use this for designing and developing new management packs for your homegrown applications, or perhaps you just have a vendor who supplied an application without a management pack. You can additionally customize existing management packs. I think one of the coolest things about MP Author and most of our tools really is that they're wizard driven. So you can use the designer and have many of the settings pre-populated with the correct values. Even the naming convention is designed by default to give you something that's meaningful and helpful. With MP Author, you can create and configure discoveries, targets, rules, and monitors, as well as vendor knowledge. Today we'll be presenting on MP Studio for Operations Manager. This is our advanced authoring tool. It's important to understand that there's more to developing management packs than just the development part. With management packs, there'll be lots of other things that you'll need to do even as a developer. So things like reporting and documentation, making that available to other stakeholders. One of the most powerful features in MP Studio is the ability to create overrides. So override management, creating overrides individually or creating overrides in bulk. It's significantly faster than doing that with native tools. As mentioned, MP Studio has advanced authoring. This is just a brief list of some of those capabilities on top of what's available in MP Author. So the ability to author process monitors, dependency and aggregate rollup monitors, a new class, as well as relationships. But as you design, develop those management packs, you'll have multiple versions. MP Studio has a database for version control and auditing capabilities. So that's very important when you're developing management packs. There are some other features in MP Studio, like the ability to view workflows that are running on any given agent. But probably to a developer, what's more important is that with MP Studio, you can do some pre-deployment testing of your management pack. That will allow you to confirm things like your discovery and targets, and so on and so forth. So are the rules and monitors actually working the way you want them to behave? And that concludes the slide presentation. I do have one brief diagram I want to share with you. This diagram represents the workflow. I'll quickly walk you through this, and then we'll hand things over to Mike to get into the actual advanced authoring part. In this diagram, you can see at the top, this is where it all begins. You're authoring that management pack, you've got a file, but you need to do other things with that. For example, being able to analyze what's in there as you put it together, being able to easily see the relationships. So with MP Studio, you can generate a reference diagram, but you can also document the management pack. In fact, you can set up a schedule and have a copy of that document sent to stakeholders. The next step in this workflow is to validate the management pack. In other words, test it in order to determine, is it going to detect the conditions that you want it to? Will it generate too many alerts? And that's a very common issue. So with MP Studio, you can create what we call the resultant set of alerts report. And this will help you identify the 20% of your rules and monitors that are most likely responsible for generating 80% of your alerts. So if you follow through from this assessment scorecard, now you can determine, okay, do I need to create some overrides to tune this management pack? And that sequence repeats until that management pack is ready for production or QA environment. So as you develop the management pack, wouldn't it be nice to have a safe, secure place to store it? MP Studio has a SQL backend. Here you check in management packs as you make changes. Multiple users can share a common database, could share the workload developing the management pack, and all that gets stored in MP Studio. And as you add copies, and this is just a best practice when it comes to development, make changes, save your changes into the stored database. MP Studio will seamlessly track those changes and provide you with an ability to schedule an audit history report that you can publish to a folder, or once again, leverage this ability to schedule an email and have that sent out periodically to all the stakeholders. Okay, there's a lot more I could talk about in this diagram, such as the ability to compare your management groups to the copy of the management packs you have in your store. And from there, you can actually deploy the management pack out into your production environment. So there is a life cycle here as the management pack changes. MP Studio has all the features to provide you with a repeatable process to work with those management packs. Okay, thank you for your patience. At this point, I'm going to turn things over to Mike Sargent, and we'll make him the presenter. Mike, are you there and good to go? I think you're still on mute.
I am unmuted now, Randy.
And you are now the presenter.
Excellent. Good morning, folks. I'll be discussing advanced authoring and walking through the creation of some of these things in MP Studio right now. And Ian, we seem to be hearing you. Ian should mute himself. Today, for our scenario, we're going to put together a sample application. Now, I'm going to simplify this as much as practical. The simplification is simply to make the presentation easier to understand. There's no limitations on MP Studio that would make that true. So in this case, we're going to create an application. Now, like so many applications in the world these days, it actually consists of a couple of parts, which is a client part and a server part. Where these parts can actually exist on the same computer or different computers. For simplicity, we're just going to assume they're on the same computer right now, but they don't have to be. Now, let me come back to my notes here. So in MP Studio, we're going to create a new management pack, and we have a nice button that creates that. I'm going to give it a name. I'm simplifying things as much as I can, so we're just going to call this Big App today. I'm going to save it to the store. This is a shared database that all users of MP Studio can share management packs. There's there's a tremendous value to that. I'm not going to get into that in any great depth, but we will be storing it there. There are control for the references that you can add to a management pack. These can be added later or at creation time. I'm just going to leave the default set in there for the time being. And I'm going to create an empty management pack. And clicking finish, that's how easy it is. Now we have a management pack, but it's got nothing in it. If we look at, for instance, targets, those are classes, monitors, there's nothing there. So we're going to create some targets. Now, just for the demonstration, I've created some registry entries there under Advanced Authoring. I have a registry entry for application installed, client installed, and server installed. Those are just so I can demonstrate it. In reality, you'd have something more like, in this case, my Canon scanner install some stuff, and so we can check to see that it's installed here. This is very similar. I just simplified it as much as possible. So we're going to go out to the registry. Now, I can browse any registry on the network with this browse button. I can select any other computer. I'm just selecting my local computer right now. I'm going to browse the registry. Now, I've already been in here this morning, so I remembered exactly where I was, but it's not too difficult to go through the drill down here. This is a typical registry key. If you've ever looked at regedit, you'll recognize this fairly well. I'm going to look at this key for application installed to see if the application is actually on this server. I'm going to create, simplify this name just a bit. The reason for that is I want everything to fit on the screen. In reality, in the real world, you'd probably be using somewhat longer names. I just want to keep these as short as possible. This is a local application, so we're just going to stay with the default base class. We're going to use the default name for the discovery. We could change those if we want to, but in this case we don't. And the target is we're going to look at all Microsoft Windows computers to see if the application is installed on them. We'll change that a little later when we look at the server and client components. And here's our logic for looking in the registry. We're going to look for this key having a value of true. We could also check for existence. In this case, I actually want to check for true. And we're going to run the discovery every day. We can change the frequency there if we want to, but I think the default will be just fine for us. And so all of our wizards end up with a summary so you can look and see what's going to be done. Almost all the values are shown here. You can go back with the previous button and change things. We don't need to, so I'm going to create that target. And as simple as that, it's created. So the target is actually the class description, and there's a discovery for that class here. That's our application. I'm going to fairly quickly go through and create the server and client components, and I'll just describe the differences when we do that. So I'm going to call this Big App Server. Just to have our, it's also based on Windows local application, that's fine. But in this case, I only want to target machines where we found the application. So this is what's called a seeded discovery. We have a simple discovery which reduces the total number of computers to concern ourselves with, and then other targets, other discoveries are based on looking at only those servers that have that application installed. Now, if this was a script discovery or even a WMI discovery, those can be slower. Seeded discovery pays off much better in those cases. But this is a technique you will want to use, so I'll just give include this in the presentation today. Again, this is true. We're looking for the server installed value of true. Same discovery, fine there. And I'll create the client. This is going to be almost exactly the same. You'll note that it actually has the value of false in the registry right now, and it'll take care of that in a second, if I can type. And again, we want to be targeted on our application, any server that has the application installed. And I'm just changing this value to true, which means it won't discover it on this system because the registry key is false, and everything else is the default. So now we have our three major components defined. What we don't have is any relationship between them. They're actually completely independent at this point. So we're going to create a couple of relationships. And we'll show where those are used a little later, but this is how you define them. What I want to say is that the source of the relationship is the application, and it contains the client. And that's about all we need to show here. And I'll do the same thing for the server. Application contains, if I remember to scroll to the top, the server. So those are our two relationships created. And at this point, I'm just going to save the management pack. You'll note that we, every time we save, we increment the revision number here. We have a summary of what's been added. Now, of course, this is everything's been added here. We can put in comments for the individual items here. So I'm just going to say create classes and relationships. Later on, when we look at the auditing, that sort of stuff, we can see where these comments can come in very useful. I'm not going to fill in any more for time. What this does is bring us to basically this diagram. We have defined those three components and the relationships between them. Now, we're not going to deal with all of this in detail, so we're going to ignore the client mostly. Okay, we're going to deal with the server. We're going to put some monitors in there. So, having said that, I want to create some monitors. So we come here to the monitors and we say create performance monitors. Now I'm going to create two of them. Again, I can scan any machine on the network to look at the performance, the performance monitors, the performance counters on that machine. I'm going to stick with my local machine right now. And what we're looking for is we want to look at the Notepad process. Now, I'm just using Notepad because it's here. You, of course, in a real application would have a separate application you'd be looking for. And I want to target the server. And the thing I want to look for is user time here. I'm going to leave everything else default, but of course you can change the sampling rate, how many samples, whether it's the parent monitor is performance. You can decide whether to collect the performance data in the data warehouse. All that controls there, but we're going to not concentrate on any of that in this case. We're going to specify the name for the monitor, and I think that's a reasonably good name, so we won't bother changing that. This is the condition under which we would raise an exception or raise an alert. In this case, we're looking at percentage of CPU, so if it's over 10%, I'm going to consider that an error. We have the health state here where you can change, whether it's over or under and whether it's healthy, critical, warning, that sort of stuff. We're leaving those all as the default right now, but in your application, you may need to change those. And we want to generate an alert for this monitor. Now, I'm not going to change anything here. We're going to discuss this a little bit later, but let's just, at this point, say I wanted an alert for this monitor. We get our summary here where we can review everything, and we're going to create the monitor. Now, I'm going to create a second monitor here, a little faster this time. Again, we're going to look at the Notepad process. Should choose one that's higher up on the list. We're going to check the working set. Again, our target is good. The big app, that's the application. We actually wanted the server. Performance, okay, we're all set there. I don't see anything that needs to be changed. The name is good. If we're looking for working set greater than 1024, throw a warning, and we will generate an alert. And we're finished. At this point, we have two monitors defined, both of which will generate alerts, which corresponds to this diagram. Our server has 2 monitors which both can generate alerts. In the real world, you often don't want to generate alerts per monitor because you end up with a lot of alert clutter. So what I'm going to do now is show you how to reduce the number of alerts by creating an aggregate monitor. The aggregate monitor will have this health for both these monitors fed into it, and it will generate an alert based on, in this case, the worst of them. So if either of these monitors are in fact would generate an alert, only one alert would be generated. If both were in an alert state, we'll still only generate one alert. And this reduces our alert volume. Now, the way we do that is under monitors here, we say create aggregate rollup monitor. Now we want to roll up performance because, of course, these are, under the category here, you'll see it says performance health, so we want performance. And what we want is the worst of. That's typical, but of course you do have control. You can specify best of if you need to. The target for the aggregate monitor, we're again looking for our server. That looks like a pretty good name, so we're just going to leave that. We could change it. We do want to generate an alert for this monitor. And here's where we're going to actually discuss some. We can discuss when we generate the alert. So when the health state changes to warning or error, our monitors were generating warnings, so that's fine. We can change the name of the alert, the display name. We can change the priority, the severity, and we can change the text. Now, since this is an aggregate, we don't have access to the data of the individual alerts, so we can only generate something that's a little more generic, but within the Operations Manager console, you can drill down in the health status to find out exactly what happened. So in this case, I'm just going to put in a rather lame message that says, server is not feeling well. These controls on the right here allow us to substitute in values. And so I'm going to put in the display name, which will give us the server. And I'm also going to tell it from the hosted control what the name of the computer is so that people can find it. So it'll tell us, server isn't working well, the proper name, and what computer it's on in the alert. And you can put an awful lot of stuff in here, but I think this is sufficient for the time being. When we create an aggregate monitor, we have the option here of specifying which monitors roll up into that aggregate. And so in this case, these are the 2 monitors we created earlier, and I want to select both of those. And we have another option here which is disable the alerts for the selected monitors. And that's what I want to do in this case, because we only want the aggregate to generate the alert. We don't want the individual monitors to generate the alerts. If you look to the right, the properties grid here is showing the alerts are defined. This is for one of the monitors that we did earlier. And we'll show you that actually goes away in a second. Again, our summary, we could go back and change things, but we don't need to. And at this point, we've created our new aggregate. Now, you will note here in the alert settings column that the alert is no longer on. So the aggregated alerts the aggregated monitors are no longer generating alerts, and it's only the aggregate monitor that is now generating an alert. And that brings us to this page, where the monitors roll up to the aggregate, and it's only the aggregate that generates the alert. Now, at this point, the health state of this whole application, one of the things that Operations Manager does not do by default is roll up the health from subordinate components to parent components. It doesn't do that automatically, but they make it fairly easily. So in this case, if the server is marked as not being healthy because one of the monitors is in alert state and so it's aggregated up, that doesn't propagate up to the application. But we want that so that we can quickly see what's wrong. So that's created. To do that, we use a dependency monitor, and again, that's in here. And what we want to do is we want to roll up, in this case, performance. Again, we can do best of, worst of, or percentage. This is a typical example would be a web farm where you have, say, 5 web servers, and if one of them's down, you don't consider it a serious problem, so you might set your percentage at 80%. So as long as 4 out of the 5 are working, you're okay. In our case, we only have 1, so we'll just use worst of. The relationship that we defined earlier is how the dependency monitors work. So we can select the relationships. We have the 2 of them here. I'm going to select the client one right now. And the default name it creates for the dependency monitor is fine. And we can specify whether we want to generate an alert for this. Now, at this point, I'm not going to generate an alert. We could, but I think we're okay. We've got the alerts coming from the server, and we would have alerts probably coming from the client. This is just to roll up the health states. We won't generate an alert. Our summary, and we're done there. And now I'm going to do the dependency for the server. And I don't think we need to do anything other than hit finish here. And at that point, we now have our dependency monitors set. Now I'm just going to do a save again. And put some comments in here. At aggregate and dependency monitors. And that's been saved. If we look here, you'll actually see that we have multiple versions, and we'll look at those in a bit later, and we can see what's actually changed. It's a great way to keep track of what's happened and to revert if you need to. Going back to our diagram here, this is the situation we had. Now we have the health roll-up. And so this is with the dependency monitors. If the processor time monitor raises an alert, that's propagated up to the health of the server, and with the dependency monitor, that's now propagated up to the health of the application. And because we specified worst of, the fact that the client is still healthy doesn't matter. The server is worse than that, so the application is listed as unhealthy. Now, let me go on here. I think actually we're making pretty good time. Just a couple other things we can do, and I'm just going to go through some of those. There's another type of monitor here. You will notice we can monitor databases, events, performance we've already looked at, process scripts, service, and websites. I'm not going to concentrate on any of those. I want to look at process monitor, though. This is a new one in MP Studio. Again, we can look at the processes running on any computer to help us browse. In this case, I'll stick with the local computer. As usual, I'm going to specify Notepad. Of course, you'd have your own choices. This is availability because if it's not running, if a process is not running or there's too many processes running, it's probably availability, but you do have the control there if you need to change it. That seems like a pretty good name there. I'm just going to skip through those. This is how often it looks. The name of the monitor. Here's the guts of the process monitor. There's 2 basic things we can do. We can make sure a process is running, or we can make sure that the process is not running. In this case, I'm going to assume that we have to have 1 copy of Notepad running, and we can limit it to a maximum number as well. So in this case, I could also change the maximum to 1, which says we can only have exactly 1 copy running. The time there, 300 seconds, allows for transients, so that if a second copy of Notepad was started briefly and quit, it wouldn't generate an alert. More likely in this case would be a process that stops itself and restarts for some reason. Maybe it's reloading from database, maybe it's changing log files, maybe it just has detected it's using too much memory and decides to restart itself. As long as it's not that it's running within 300 seconds after restarting, again, you won't generate an alert. We check every 60 seconds, and all these numbers, of course, you can change. We don't need to worry about that. Again, we can generate an alert. I'll make that an error, and we're just going to tack in a couple of the properties here. So the target, we have the process name is not running the correct number of instances on, and get host name. Again, our summary, and we've created it. One of the things we wanted to show is this property grid on the right-hand side here, where we can change the values of properties very easily. So our alert priority was normal when we created this, but let's say we've decided that it's actually low. We really don't care too much about that. So we can just change that there. It'll update immediately. I'm actually going to save this MP. I'm not going to put a comment in here because what I want to do is show you how fine-grained the editing is. So let's say we actually wanted this priority to be high. If I save it again, you will note this line here in particular, that we've changed the alert priority from low to high. And I'll put in a comment, priority was wrong. And one of the important things to note here is that we record who made the changes, when the changes were made. And with a shared management pack, a shared database, a shared store, you can have multiple users working on that. As long as they're all making the changes through MP Studio, you'll have very good tracking on who made what changes when. And I can do that by looking here at the audit history report. I'm not going to go through this in any great detail, but I will group by changed by. I'm going to group by the reason. And so if we look, Mike made the changes, here's a change he made, and from there we should be able to find that alert priority fairly quickly to drill down to see who did what. I don't want to spend too much time on this, but you can also schedule those sorts of reports. A lot of the features in here can be scheduled, and I believe Randy will be talking more about that later. Some of the other things you can do with the management pack to help with your authoring are here under the root node. You can edit the XML, and I'm not going to get into any great detail here, but this is generally true in all of our elements. You can actually edit the XML. I'm just going to bring it up to show that it's there. You can make changes if you need to. That, of course, is somewhat of a last resort. We'd prefer not to have to ever do that, but you certainly can if you need to. I mentioned that you can add references. You can also remove unused references and things like that. I don't want to get into any great depth here, but just say that it's available to you. You can check for missing display names. Now, we did everything through the wizard, so all the display names will be here, so it shows here, row count equals 0. There are no missing display names, but if there were, it's very easy to add them. One of the other things you can do is run the verify from the Management Packs SDK. This is going to actually generate some warnings, and we'll show you those. They warn about management packs containing class and relationship definitions. But there are no other warnings, and these are fairly normal things. One of the other things you can do is run the best practices analyzer. I'm not going to go through the results of this in any great detail. If you've never run this before, it does a much more thorough test. So at the top here, there's some summary and shows you, pass and fails, warnings, info, all that sort of stuff, and then details down here. You'll notice most of these things are pass and are shown in green. What I find is very useful is to tell it not to display pass, and then I can just scroll down for anything that isn't in green. And one of the things it points out to me is that we haven't created knowledge for any of the discoveries or monitors. So let's go and quickly look at that. I'm going to come back to my monitor here. I'm going to click on that one. I'm going to say create or edit knowledge. It brings up this window. And in here, we can add, summary information for the monitor. I do try to spell correctly in these things. We can specify information about the configuration, the causes, using too much CPU, that sort of stuff. Resolutions, restart the app after saving, those sorts of comments, so that your operators, when there is a problem, have this sort of information available to them. That's pretty much it for those sorts of features. As usual, keep looking at the right click here. You can find an awful lot of stuff. There's comparisons, documentation. I know Randy will be talking about more of those features. The last one I want to discuss here is Seal. And we'll save it. So the Seal allows you to take a .xml management pack and turn it into a .mp management pack. Now, MP Author ships with a signing certificate. If you use that, and you can, it'll be signed as if it was created by MP Author, and every MP Author user using that key will have the same key. So temporarily, I would suggest you can use that, but in the long run, you want to get your own signing key and company name. I'm just going to use the defaults here. Click OK, and it's done. That's how quick it is. It's really quite quick. And this folder here, there's the new MP that we just added and we sealed. And I'm going to actually copy paste here. I'm going to import that into the store just to show how that's done if you wanted to. Oh, I think we're actually in the same folder. We have a comment here. I could change anything I want. You don't need to. And so there's the new app. This is the sealed version. So here is the unsealed version, and if we double click on this, let me close that first. Double click on that, now it's open. You'll notice the lock icon here shows that this is a sealed MP. And so many things are not available to you. You can't add new monitors, for instance. So what you always want to do is keep your unsealed versions as well as the sealed versions you deploy. The reason I wanted to load this up was to simply show you that if you run the verify, now that we're a sealed MP, there will be no warnings because the sealed MP has the classes and relationships, and the SDK is completely happy with that. I think that pretty much covers what I wanted to show, and I think I'm pretty much on time. Randy, is there anything you want me to show, or should I just hand it back?
No, Mike, I think that was excellent. I appreciate that you were saving copies in there and went over the audit history. That's awesome. Thank you very much.
Great.
Okay, so sorry, Mike. Yeah, what we're going to do next, I'll just take controls back and share my screen out here. And you will be able to see my MP Studio console now. And there's a couple of things I would like to share with you. Documentation capabilities. We've looked at some of the auditing. We'll take another little bit of a look at that. We're going to look at override management a bit as well. And I'll give you an introduction to the test feature as well as group compare. So there's some other things coming here. And to start with, I am just simply going to work with an MP that's in a management group. So up top, we've got the store database, but I've registered a single management group. And what I'd like to do is share with you the ability to do things like view a reference tree. So you could be doing this with any of the Microsoft management packs or ones that you've authored yourself. And this just gives you another way to confirm some of the stuff that you're expecting, such as all the references. You can drill down to view the details of that management pack. We're currently looking at Windows Server 2012 monitoring. Any of the management packs that you've got, you can very easily document by just simply right-clicking on the root of the management pack and choosing to document it. So you can document it to an HTML report or to an Excel workbook. And what you're going to notice in several places in MP Studio is the ability to automate some of these things. And documentation is one of them. We won't go through this and complete it all, but I just want to point out that you could publish your documents to a folder. You can also set up email subscription and have email sent to the entire team or to a group, or perhaps you're developing a management pack and you want to provide, say, a daily status to your manager. You could do that with the scheduling capability. Back to the documentation piece, the richest document you can create is this workbook. I've already generated one of these reports for my Windows Server 2012 monitoring MP. And you can see we have a separate worksheet for each element. So let's take a look at the 97 rules in this management pack. Now, one of the things that's probably jumping out already is those blue rows. These are the overrides that have been created for the element directly above it. So in row 5, we can see the override for the memory percent committed bytes in use. And if we just expand that a little bit, we can see, for example, the enable status is set to false. So not only are you getting the overrides, or sorry, the rules in this report, you're also able to see what overrides have been created. Same holds true for monitors. So here we're looking at the monitors. All that shaded blue part represents the overrides that have been created for this particular management pack. So very detailed documentation capabilities. Another way to document when working with management packs in MP Studio is simply to use the Export to Excel toolbar button. So for example, why don't we go up and we'll take a look at audit history. That's one where you might want to generate an ad hoc report and then share it with somebody. Okay, so I'm going up into my store folder here. And here we've got a backup of the management group. You can right click on the management group folder, root folder, and schedule backups. Or you can kick one off on an ad hoc basis. And that just simply copies any management packs that have changed into the management group folder in the store database. So I've got all my override MPs in here. For example, here's one for the 2012 R2 monitoring MP. And I can right click and choose to view that audit history, or I could schedule that. Okay, so let's view this report. Here's my audit history, and just as Mike had customized his grid, you may want to group that by changed by and perhaps changed on if you're looking for something specific or some values that were potentially changed on a specific date. And if I want to document this, I can use that export to Excel. Okay, so that's the second way to document MPs, just using that export to Excel toolbar button, and it will honor the same grouping or any filters, custom settings you had set up in the MP Studio console. Okay, so here is another management pack that Mike had been working on, and he emailed this to me earlier. And I'm just going to open this management pack, and I want to cover a little bit more on the auditing capabilities. So in this particular case, however, I'm going to create some overrides for some of these rules and monitors that Mike had developed for me before I deploy this out to my management group. So in this case, we've got 6 monitors in here, and all I need to do to get started is to right-click and choose Manage Overrides. So let's grab one of these here randomly, choose Manage Overrides. This will expose the properties that are available to me. In this particular case, each of these have already been created, but I can modify these. Now note the destination management pack here, that's the correct place to store these. And now I'm going to modify the setting. So we'll just make some random changes here. What I really want to do is just prove the point that we're tracking these changes for you. And in fact, if I want to delete an override, all I need to do is uncheck that checkbox. Okay, so we can go ahead and apply these changes. This is just a confirmation message to make sure I'm storing them in the right management pack. The last thing we want to do is put them in the wrong place. Select yes. We're incrementing the version number. We're tracking the changes. We've got a deletion here and 4 changes. We're tracking who made the change, the time of the change, and there's our before and after value. I might want to put a work order number in here, or perhaps who requested the change. Save that. And we've made some changes in there. Now let's just come down to where that override management pack is stored. Here's the override management packs. Here's the one I just edited. Just looking at this, you can see there was 1 deletion and 4 changes. If I want to, I can go in and open that override management pack itself and come right in here and start making changes as well. I'm not going to demonstrate each of these features because I have several things I want to share with you before we wrap up, but one of them is simply to do a delete. Okay, so that's pretty straightforward. You can do that in bulk if you want to. And let's now take a look at an edit. So I can go in and just simply modify the value here from false to true. Some of the other options include the ability to copy or move overrides. That's a pretty powerful feature. If you've accidentally stored overrides in the wrong MP, MP Studio can help you clean that up. So that's something I won't be demonstrating today. We'll have another webinar perhaps in a couple of weeks, and that's something that would demonstrate at that time. So you can also create and edit knowledge. When Mike was talking about knowledge authoring, that was vendor knowledge. You're going to seal that MP, and that knowledge is sealed in there as well. But if you want to create some additional company knowledge, so perhaps you're responsible for operations, development has authored the MP and handed it over to you, you might want to add some additional knowledge in there, and that'll get stored in the override MP as well. A couple of other ways to edit, and if Mike's already mentioned them, well, great, but here's just one more option. On the right-hand side, you've got the Properties View Edit. And in there, anything that's bold, you can modify. Okay, so I could change the value from true to false or vice versa. You could modify the name if you wanted to do that. Okay, so perhaps development used some terminology that you're not quite comfortable with. You may want to make a change to the name. That's another place you could do it. Additionally, you can drop down into the XML. I wouldn't call this my preferred method of doing it, but you can also edit that if you wish. Okay, so I see there's an asterisk up here beside the name of this management pack. I'm just going to save that in there. We'll have an updated version 5. There's a preview of the audit history. And there's the management pack in here now. Okay, so we've created some overrides and you know, you've done due diligence and Mike's handed this MP off, but really I want to know how this is going to behave before I put it into my production environment. You may recall from that workflow diagram the ability to test a management pack. So I would probably first create my audit history report, or maybe I've already got a schedule set up so my manager's getting an update to this. The next thing I want to do is test this management pack to find out how many alerts it might generate. So there's a couple of ways that I can do it. I can do it right from here. I can kick off the test, but I want to actually test Mike's MP as well. So what I'm going to do is I'll just start here. We're not going to go through the entire process because it'll take probably a few minutes just for the setup, and then typically you'll run a 1-hour test of a management pack. But what I'd like to do is at least introduce the wizard to you so you can see how this works, and you'll get a very good feel for the feature. Okay, so the first thing I need to do is enter the name of a server I want to test against. The only requirement here is that the server you specify has the Operations Manager agent installed on it. Okay, now as you can see, this is a management pack in the store database that I'm testing. This is not a management pack in my management group. So in essence, we're working offline, but I'm pointing this test at a server on the network, presumably. In my case, I'm just using my laptop, but you could point this at any machine on your network you've got access to. Okay, you would need to have local administrator access on that box. All right, so just like running Perfmon or Event Viewer, you need local admin access. Okay, so once you've entered credentials in there, you can go to the next step in this test wizard. Here I specify the duration of my test. And as I mentioned, probably a best practice is to run a test for half an hour or an hour. You can schedule that test to start later in the day if you wish, and then review the sample rate. So if you're running a test for a day, you're not going to want to sample the event logs every minute. So in a shorter test though, we're sampling the event logs every minute, we're sampling perfmon counters every 10 seconds, okay? And that's all there is to setting up this test. It's ready to kick off. When you do that, MP Studio will recreate the health model. It will confirm you've got access to the perfmon counters, the event logs, the registry, and then it'll go out and it'll start collecting that data, compare it to the configuration of not just the sealed management pack, but its reference management packs and the override management pack. So in this particular scenario, I'd be testing both of those at the same time. And this will give me an indication of what rules and monitors are going to be generating all the alerts in my environment. So that 20/80 rule applies. Find those 20% of the rules and monitors that are most likely to generate all the alerts and tune those so that you're eliminating any unnecessary alerts, hopefully. Okay, so that gives us a sneak peek at the test feature. And let's see, let's take a look at one more. Let's make an assumption here that that management pack generated a few alerts and we're satisfied with that. The next thing I want to do is get that out into my production environment. Now I could have multiple management groups. In my particular case, I'm only connected to one, but the report I'm going to show you right now is called the Group Compare, and you could schedule this if you wish. Let's go right into the view. What this is going to do is it's going to compare all the management packs in my store database to the versions of the same management packs in all of my management groups. Okay, let's create a little more real estate. Now, I'll describe this a little bit more. I'm going to hide the name column. Okay, so you can, anytime you're working with a grid in MP Studio, you have this flexibility to slice and dice the view to make it a little more meaningful or easier to work with. We'll make a couple more customizations here, but I'll draw your attention to the store column. This shows the version of the MP in the store database. And then to the right, you can see my management group, and that shows the version of the same management pack, if it exists, in the management group. Now, if you had multiple management groups, each of them would be listed here. Okay, so you can really get a good sense of what versions are where, and let's customize this just a little bit. I'm going to group by the sealed column, and then I'm going to group by the result column. Once you've got that customized the way you want to, you can set it as the new default. So a couple of things you can see here, that we've got a newer one in this particular case in the management group than we have in the store. That could mean you need to run a backup, and that'll copy the unsealed management packs back into the store folder, management group backup folder. Okay, however, what I want to do is let's focus on, we've got a newer one available here. Any one of these 4 management packs, you can see there's a newer one available in the store database. So I might want to deploy that out to my management group. In this particular case, the path shows the location in the store folder, and that's a folder I typically use for cleaning up overrides when I've got overrides accidentally stored in the default management pack, for example. So let's find the one we've been working with, and let's see. So we could deploy any of these. What I really like to do is just demonstrate that from this group compare report, you can take that, whether it's an override MP, here's the one we've been working with, you can see it does not exist in the management group. And if I want to synchronize or update my management group or groups, I would be able to do that. So MP Studio is really a central point for managing the deployment of your management packs across all of your management groups. Okay, let's just cancel out of that. And I see we have just a couple more minutes, and I would encourage you to keep entering questions. If you have questions, enter those into the chat window. One more feature I'd like to share with you is the ability to view the workflow running on any agent in your management group. You might want to first create this report that reports on all agents in the management group. And from that list of agents, you can generate the workflow. So while that report, okay, here it is. So from here, you can choose to view the workflow running on any agent in the management group. Okay, so I've already run that report. Here's the workflow running on SCOM. This is showing every rule, monitor, and discovery running against that server. Okay, so I can quickly see I've got 390 monitors running on that box. If I just group that by one more field, the MP name, now I can see I've got 22 management packs running at least one monitor. And if I drill down a little bit further, here I can see the Microsoft System Center 2007 MP has 79 monitors, and in fact there's that blue shading. We can see what overrides have been created for that particular monitor. Okay, on that note, I'm just going to wrap up the presentation, and we do have a couple of minutes left, and we're going to stay on the call here. So if you want to continue to submit questions, you're welcome to do that. What I'd really like to do is let you know that we are going to be providing a quick survey to you, and I would encourage you to answer those questions. It certainly helps us build better products, so we're always interested in your feedback, and so you will, each of you attending today will receive that that survey. And on this note, I will stop the recording, but as mentioned, we will continue for a few minutes. As long as there are questions coming in, we will stay online. On behalf of Silex Software, I'd like to thank everybody for joining. I hope that the presentation has given you some insight into how MP Studio can not only provide advanced authoring capabilities, but it also provides some additional features that you can leverage, like the documentation and auditing capabilities, the change management capabilities, the ability to test your management packs, and then eventually deploy them. Additionally, the ability to create overrides and manage those overrides. Thank you very much.